Subomito, Madame, and Plux. These three were, of the many scrapped Pokemon designs considered for Generation 2, likely the three closest to reaching the final game. All three were new evolutions of Gen 1 Pokemon. In Tsubomito's case, it was a new split evolution. If you're familiar with the 1997 Space World build of Pokémon Gold and Silver, you may recognize these designs from that build. Unlike many of the Pokemon in that build, including many other relatives of Gen 1 Pokemon, our lost trio persisted. When development of Gold and Silver were completely restarted, around late 1998 and early 1999, Subomito, Madame, and Plux would survive the development reboot. They would all become fully fleshed out Pokemon. By July 1999, they seemed like shoo-ins for the final roster. However, by Space World 1999, held in mid-August, they were all on their way out. Much of their data was still there, including their back sprite, but their front sprite was now filled by weird, rough sketches of these brand new designs. These rough sketches would quickly evolve into brand new Pokemon, who took the spots of our lost trio in the final game. It's really quite bizarre. Why did they replace these basically finished designs with these brand new ones? In this video, I am going to delve into why this may have happened, why they all may have been scrapped. I'm going to closely examine all three of these lost Pokemon. Because this is a competitive Pokemon channel, I am also going to speculate how well all three of them might have done, had they existed in the competitive Gen 2 worlds. Let's start off with Subomito. Subomito was a new, alternative evolution of Weepinbell. I'm quite a fan of its weird design, and the sprite they eventually gave it looks really nice. It's a nice contrast to the more imposing Victreebel. Subomito was one of the several split evolutions created during development, alongside Slowking, Politoed, and Blossom. Oddish and Bellsprout were designed as counterparts to one another, and in Gen 2, both of them would receive a new split evolution. To get Blossom and Subomito, you'd give your Gloom and Weepinbell, respectively, a Poison Stone, a scrapped evolution stone from the 1997 era. In the 1997 build, Blossom and Subomito had placeholder stats, and very similar move pools to Vileplume and Victreebel, respectively. They also both had the same typing as their alternative evolution. 1997 Blossom was a grass poison type. Having these two new Pokemon be almost identical to already existing Pokemon and each other is not great gameplay wise. Both evolutions would be forced to have the same base stat total as their alternative form, so it was hard to come up with something distinct. Despite this, Subomito would make it through the development restart, and the team seemed to like it a lot. A lot of work was done on Subomito in 1999. It got a new sprite, a Pokédex entry, footprints, you name it. After the Poison Stone was scrapped, Subomito was made to evolve via Sunstone in July 1999, just like Blossom. That's all nice, but the team were still figuring out how to make Subomito feel distinct. In April, it had its stats swapped around to make it a more offensive Victreebel, giving it 15 extra attack and special attack at the cost of cuts to its defensive stats and speed. Eventually, Subomito's stats would be switched again. Ditching its more unique glass cannon stats from earlier, it was now just Victreebel with 15 extra attack and 15 less special attack. Despite all this work, Subomito struggled to stand out. Worse yet, its counterpart Blossom had found a way to feel distinct. They removed Blossom's poison typing, making it a mono grass type. This changed how Blossom plays and makes it feel distinct from Vileplume. Just removing the poison type again with Subomito would feel redundant, and it seems Game Freak never considered doing this. Subomito just felt redundant from a gameplay standpoint. When the developers began brainstorming some new Pokemon ideas, probably in early to mid-August, that was cause for concern for Subomito. Game Freak had quickly whipped up this new water-electric type Pokemon named Chinchou. To make this weak-looking anglerfish into something usable, they decided to give it an evolution. However, they needed a slot to put this evolution in. Something had to be replaced, so this evolution could exist. Subomito was ultimately replaced by Lantern, the new evolution of Chinchou. I am ultimately happy we got Lantern in its place. Lantern is a way more interesting Pokemon gameplay wise than Subomito. Now, it's time to speculate a competitive Subomito. Assuming it was given the stats it had just before being scrapped, I think it would depend. I highly doubt it shows up in OU, especially not in the place of Exeggutor, Meganium, or Venusaur. Assuming Subomito is in UU, I don't think it's very good. Victory Bell is in UU, and it's a severely flawed Pokemon. Grass Poison is a rough typing to have in GSC UU. I doubt Subomito is far more usable in UU, despite the higher attack stat. If we allow Subomito into NU though, Subomito would be fantastic, maybe even too good. Grass Poison is a much better typing in the NU world, a naturally weaker tier than UU. Gloom is a strong contender in GSC NU. Imagine a way stronger Grass Poison type running around. That's all I have to say about Subomito. It's now time to look at Madame, the lost evolution of Farfetch'd. Of the three Pokemon in this video, I feel like this one was the least likely to be cut. The story of Madame is kinda sad. The faults of a completely unrelated Gen 2 Pokemon played a major role in its downfall. We'll get back to that later. Madame was a new evolution of Farfetch'd. Farfetch'd was a very weak Pokemon in Gen 1. Farfetch'd was a natural choice for an evolution. Farfetch'd could now become this sleek, classy looking bird named Madame, who could put up a fight. Madame was a solid design, one whom Game Freak seemed to like a lot. Madame showed up in the 1997 build, and easily survived through the great 1999 migration. Our lost bird was heavily worked on in 1999. It was given a new sprite, modelled after its one in the 1997 build, that again looks really nice. We also got some stats for it. These stats aren't mind-blowing, but they are certainly a big step up from Farfetch'd. 105 attack is not something to scoff at, especially with Madame learning Sword Stance. Farfetch'd was given a more prominent role in the rebooted Gold and Silver. You could now catch it in the wild, and you would chase one early on. Madame was originally set to evolve from Farfetch'd at level 24, but in July, it was changed to evolve via friendship. Madame had it all the makings of a fully finalized, locked Pokemon for release. So, what happened? Why was Madame randomly tossed at the last minute? Well, a lot of it is the fault of Quagsire. The history of Quagsire is a story for another time, but just know that it was one of the first designs created for Gold and Silver, and it's one Game Freak clearly loved. Throughout most of Gold and Silver's development though, Quagsire was a single stage Pokemon. It had no evolutionary relatives. This is where problems came in. The team wanted to put Quagsire on early game routes. Quagsire was much stronger than the other Pokemon on early routes, both in terms of stats and looks. If they were to weaken Quagsire though, it would become a poor Pokemon in the mid to late game. It was decided that Quagsire would receive a pre-evolution, something less powerful to populate the early game routes. The Pokemon who was kicked out in favor of a Quagsire pre-evolution was Madame. A choice that is honestly surprising. If Game Freak wanted to remove a Gen 1 evolution, I'm surprised Blissey or Porygon 2 were not the ones scrapped. Blissey and Porygon 2 went through several design changes and had more trouble developments than Madame did. Porygon 2 was giving attention to Porygon, a very controversial Pokemon because of that incident. Blissey, meanwhile, was a far less necessary evolution than Madame was. It's honestly puzzling that Madame was cut. We know who replaced it and a likely reason why, but the fact that Madame specifically was chosen is odd. Maybe they didn't want to add yet another normal flying type, or maybe Game Freak just lost interest in Madame. Who really knows? Madame was deleted, and there's no trace of it in the final game. Or is there? If you go and play Pokemon Gold and Silver today, in 2025, and you go out there and catch a Wooper, pay attention to its Pokédex entry. Do you see something odd? Look at that footprint. That footprint seems unfitting. It doesn't look like Wooper's footprint. It almost looks like a duck's footprint. Interestingly, this was changed in future Pokemon games. Game Freak failed to scrub every trace of Madame. The ghost of Madame still haunts the Pokédex entry of the Pokemon who replaced it. That's all for Madame's development. Now, how good do I think it would have been? In my opinion, Madame is a very mixed bag. It's got some real positives. Good attack, stab normal attacks, sword stance, agility, and baton pass. However, its defensive stats and coverage move pool leave a lot to be desired. A good speed stat could make up for this, but Madame sat at just 70 base speed. A lot would naturally outspeed Madame, and it did not have the bulk to take hits. Madame stands no chance in GSCOU. It's certainly a lower tier Pokemon. In UU, I still don't see Madame being that great. It's got a lot of potential, especially with the ability to pass Sword Stance and hit hard. However, I see Scyther being better at baton passing Sword Stance. I think Madame could be viable in GSCUU, but I see it more as an NU Pokemon. In NU, I see Madame being great. Not only is it a stronger sweeper in this weaker environment, but it's able to baton pass. Madame can baton pass Sword Stance and Agility, a lethal combination. Farfetch'd is already a usable NU Pokemon because of baton pass, and Madame would do everything Farfetch'd does while being a much bigger threat itself. I see Madame being a real threat in GSCNU. And that's all I have to say about Madame. It's now time to look at Plux, the lost Pinsir evolution. Plux was the scrapped Bulk Steel evolution of Pinsir. Plux gave Pinsir a more metallic look, a sharp new horn, and a rather startling mask. Plux is a very striking and imposing design. Imagine seeing this thing run at you, having that soulless, expressionless face on its mask. Pinsir and Scyther were counterparts, and they would both evolve in Generation 2. It's like how Subomito and Blossom were counterpart evolutions. Plux showed up in Space World 1997, and would survive the development restart, and again received a lot of attention in 1999. One interesting thing I noticed was its cry. Take a listen. In the final game, Wobbuffet uses a modified version of this cry. For most of development, from the 1997 build to July 1999, Plux was just a bug type. It would not become Bug Steel until July 30th, 1999. Shortly before it was scrapped. Scizor, meanwhile, originally kept Scyther's bug flying typing. In April 1999, Scizor was set to be just Scyther with 20 more attack, 15 more speed, and 5 more special defense. On July 30th, 1999, Scizor became a Bug Steel type, and its stats were rearranged accordingly. Game Freak now had 2 Bug Steel types, with similar move pools and similar stats. They both evolved in the exact same way. You traded them while holding a Metal Coat. To further complicate things, Heracross now existed. Heracross was yet another bug type, with similar stats who shared similar moves. These 3 bug types were side by side in the Pokédex, forming a powerful bug trio. This is certainly a cool concept, but the issue of redundancy started to crop up. Do we really need all 3 of these similar bug types? In Game Freak's mind, the answer was no. Game Freak decided this trio should instead be a duo. The one they decided to delete was Plux. What happened after is rather perplexing. Plux was likely removed for being unnecessary, so who did Game Freak replace it with? They replaced a Bug Steel type with a focus on defense and attack with a Bug Steel type who focused on defense, though with less attack now. Unlike Wooper and Lantern, Forretress shares a lot in common with its ancestor. Forretress is basically just Plux in a new form. Compare their stats. The area Forretress would most differ in is moves. Plux would learn moves like Sword Stance and Guillotine, while Forretress had Explosion, Rapid Spin, and Spikes. Regardless, if Plux was scrapped because it was unnecessary, then Forretress doesn't solve that issue. After Forretress was added, Forretress was made to evolve from Pineco. Before Forretress was made up, Pineco was a single stage random Pokemon. It was actually a grass type for a while. It only went bug when Forretress came along. Pinsir would remain a single stage Pokemon, now taking Heracross along as its new counterpart. Now, it's time to speculate on Plux in the competitive world. Well, Forretress is a critical Pokemon in GSCOU and Ubers. Surely Plux is great too. Well, no. The only reason Forretress is so crucial in OU and Ubers is Spikes, a move Plux lacks. Without Spikes, Plux isn't that great in OU. Scizor gives us a decent idea of how OU Plux would work. Despite the high attack stat and great typing, Plux would ultimately suck too much against top threats, namely Zapdos and Skarmory, to be consistent. The only reason Scizor isn't worthless in OU is Baton Pass, another move Plux lacks. I see Plux being a UU Pokemon. Plux would be, in my opinion, very powerful in UU, maybe even ban-worthy. Its sole weakness is Fire, a less common attacking type in UU. Its access to Earthquake is a major advantage over Pinsir, as is its additional Steel typing. The steep drop in speed is a big disadvantage, but with support, I see Plux being a terror. It may even be able to pull off defensive sets. A Bug Steel type with 140 base defense has a lot of defensive value in GSCUU. Here's some more information that I did not have time to fit anywhere else. If you want more information on the various Pokemon discussed in this video, then check out the Cutting Room Floor and the Cryptodex by Asmorano. The latter is the main thing that inspired me to make this video. It was also my primary source. If you want information on every Pokemon in Gen 2, used and unused, then go read the entire thing. It's great. That's all I have to say. The next time you use Wooper, Lantern, and Forretress, take a moment to remember whom came before them.